All right. Uh, Looks like we've got a decent group of folks that have already found their way into the into the kind of attendee pool here. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we kick this off. We'll do some quick intros, but we are going to be recording this both for posterity, but also we've got a handful of folks out there that couldn't make it and want us to send it over to them. So we'll make sure to get it over to them. Guys, we're going to walk you through the product here. We're going to go through a handful of questions. We've gotten some questions kind of from the audience already that have reached out to us asking for different things about what's going on within the industry and what's going on with as this product develops. We also, if you want to drop any questions, there should be like a little Q&A box on the bottom of your screen. Feel free to add anything in there. Raise your hand, drop a text. I don't think we're going to be able to hear you all, so the best way to drop something in front of us would be through the Q&A or the chat function. But Thomas, not a typo. That's the real name. It was given to me. I had no say in it. Co-founder, CEO of Basepath. Really excited to be walking you through what I think is probably one of the more exciting products that Basepath has ever built. We've largely been kind of an operations company and have taken a big step in delivering our general manager tool to the market, already in a dozen or so schools across the country and getting more and more users by the day. I'll let Bob introduce himself, but I do have to brag on Dan for just 1 minute before he introduces himself too. Dan leads up our product team. Dan and the entire team, kind of behind and with him, have put a ton of effort and time into building this tool into what it is today. And this product is largely built on the ideas and the feedback not of us, but of our users and of the folks that we've been fortunate enough to work with throughout this process. And we'll show you guys here in kind of some depth what the tool looks like and how it all functions and feels. And we'll try to point out where hey, that's a feature that exists because Pat at North Carolina told us to build it, or because our Will at Florida State, or whatever it may be. These are the kinds of things that we're really trying to build into the product. So as we get into this, as you're seeing it, if you have thoughts, if you have feedback, if you have questions, please bring them to us. At worst, we'll build it for everyone else that uses the product, and at best, we'll be able to hopefully optimize something for you guys. But yeah, thank you all for taking the time. Bob, I'll kick it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. So Bob Agramonte, president of Basepath. One of the things I'd like to point out is that I joined Basepath about 3 months ago in this capacity and had been sort of informally working with the company for the previous 4 or 5 months prior to that. And one of the things that I just have found really, really cool compared to a lot of the other companies that I've been part of, and companies even in the space, is what Thomas just pointed out is so much of what we do. I mean, the word client centric is sort of like a cliche that is used in business when somebody wants to really show off and kind of throw that big word out there to impress people. But we take that to heart. So we're going to put our money where our mouth is, and we want to be as client centric. Please ask us, even when we're doing a demo. If somebody has a question of how may you do this, how may you adapt to this, because that's one of the things that we're super proud of, whether it's with this or whether it's with our operations software, is that there is a ton of flexibility. There's a ton of adaptability to it. And so if we don't point that out, please call us out on it, and we will be sure to do that. But with that being said, I really want to turn it back to Thomas and really to Dan, because I think we're going to
Yeah,
start with showing you this product,
yeah,
showing you what it'll do, and then we can come back with a bit of a Q&A that'll highlight a lot of the product features of it.
yeah. And I'll kick it over to you. As you can see, Dan is in the boardroom. Bob and I are just calling from our homes, but yeah, let's take it away, dude.
Cool. Yeah, excited to be here with you all. Like Tom and Bob have said, please feel free to reach out with any feedback you have, and we really take that to heart and make sure we build stuff that will be useful to all of you. So for the general manager demo, I want to kind of approach this in three different layers today. So the first one we're going to talk about is the administrative layer of the tool, and that's not the most exciting part, but a really important part, that we've built a solid foundation for you and your organizations to ensure that the right people can be a part of the system with the right permissions. They can see and interact with the right pieces of data, and kind of build the foundation for some of the more exciting analytics and kind of competitive tools we built into the system to help your program succeed. So the second two pieces we'll talk about are analytics on the department side and then at the player level to kind of help build out the most competitive rosters.
And
So
Dan, I'll just interrupt you for a second there, folks. Just one other thing I'll just say philosophically, everything that you're about to see here is real. It's live. It's being used by folks across the country today. You're not going to see anything. We'll let you know if we're showing you things that are not real, that are in development, that are on the roadmap. But the point that Dan is making here is we're trying to set a foundation that allows us to move in a bunch of different directions. This is like V1.25 of what is going to likely be a V10 product that has a ton of runway to it. Fortunately, we've been able to kind of build this thing with a foundation that allows us to really accelerate customizability and some of the more exciting component pieces that we'll touch on here in a moment. But yeah, sorry, Dan.
Yep, no, great. And to add on that, this is fully integrated with our existing suite of products. So that's another layer of kind of the importance with these tools we've set up to make sure you got the right people in the right places, because this is a really connected system. So I'll start just quickly with our kind of our staff system. So you can invite any given member of your organization to general manager. You can give them access to only general manager if that's appropriate for that person. You can then go one layer deeper and fence them off to just a specific team, or we can give full admin access to the entire system, and they'll have access to deals, tasks, payouts, kind of the existing contract operations piece of the system that some of you are familiar with today. So after you've got your staff in the system, and the next set of kind of administrative tools that we'll use are budgeting and teams. So the first thing you can do is set a department-wide budget. So we already got one in the system here. You can see we've got different component pieces. So you can make that budget up of rev share, collective, brand deal, scholarship, Alston, and of course adjust these to whatever you see fit for your given organization. Once you've set the department budget, you can then start allocating that $30 million across the different teams in your system. So in this example, we've got football, baseball, and hockey. But depending on your organization, we can add, whichever teams that you guys need. And from there, we start bringing out the budget to specific teams, like I said, and they'll have the same fund sources. So you can break down line by line where the football team is getting the $16.5 million. So 10 million from rev share, 4 from the collective, so on and so forth. Okay, so that covers staff and budgets. The next layer is the teams and rosters. So we're going to look at football for today's demonstration. Once we've entered into the team space, we'll have the ability to build different rosters for that team. So right now we're looking at the 2024 season. Within a given season, you can have a single official roster and then as many mock rosters as you'd like, so that you can run different scenarios and analyze different budget allocations, different team compositions without having to worry about changing or overriding any of the data in your official roster. You can also zoom ahead into the future and start building out seasons in the future. So in this case, 2025 and 2026. So the way to create a roster is really easy. You give it a name, and then you can just copy from a previous roster. So our customer success team will help get your official rosters in. That'll be a very quick and seamless process. And then from there, you can start copying from that roster and adjust the compositions so you can do that scenario analysis like I mentioned. Once you've got your rosters into the system, you can now manage the roster. And this is where we start providing some of that competitive edge and analytics that really bring the general manager product to life. So we're looking at the official 2024 roster. And there's a couple of things I want to do here. So first, I just want to highlight some of the tools we give you to help view and interact with this roster in some easy and meaningful ways. So the first one I'll call out is this tagging system, which this was some customer feedback. And this will allow you to get a really quick understanding of how you categorize and think about different players on the roster. So you can see we've got this one set up with an injury tag. So Alex has been injured. We can really quickly call that out. We can also add different tags about players we're trying to retain or recruit, or top contributors within the team. We've also on the left side got a set of filters so that you can zero in on, maybe a specific graduation year, a specific position, and find players that you want to adjust or kind of analyze on the roster. Another piece of feedback that we've implemented is this depth chart view, which a lot of people have really enjoyed. So if you click depth chart over here, you'll see the same data, but it's displayed in a way that's kind of easier to draw some insights at a glance. So you get budget allocation to offense. You can see we're a little bit offensive heavy on our spend here. You can see those tags that I mentioned really clearly, see some open spots that we need to fill. And that's what I want to do now. So we're going to add a kicker to the team. And you can see when you go to fill the spot, we'll automatically filter for any kickers in General Manager. Like I said, this is connected to Contract Op. So we would have pulled all of your players within Basepath, and you'll be able to select, based on a given position who you want to add to the roster. If for some reason you haven't categorized someone properly, you can always remove that filter and you can see here's a list of your entire team and you can add someone to that spot. You can also add a prospect from outside of your organization. So that's someone you're trying to recruit. Maybe they're not on your team yet, so they're not in Basepath. You can come here, fill out the information, and then you can start doing analysis with that player on your roster. So we're going to add Jake Bates here real quick. You can see he's already got a couple tags, so we're trying to retain him. He's a top contributor. And then I want to go back to this table view and talk a little bit about analytics and kind of our integrations with our contracts and payment system. So you can see Jake Bates. Let me switch this date range real quick.
If you didn't watch Sunday Night Football, Jake Bates, by the way, single-handedly won the game for the Lions, so probably worth keeping around. For if you didn't know, we're from Michigan, Detroit-based, so you're looking at the Lions roster here.
Yeah, so you can see Jake Bates. We obviously want to keep him around, so he's got the retention tag. We want to pay him $120,000 this year. We should probably bump that up. But you can see here we're pulling data in live from our contract operations part of the product suite. So you can see within that contract operations, he's got $110,000 under contract. So let me just walk through this again a little bit slowly, just to make sure we're catching this. This is an important piece of the product. So me as a GM administrator have come in and said, we want to retain Jake. We think we need to pay him $120,000 this year. And so we can enter this here. We could bump that up to 1.2 million, 200, whatever we want. This is kind of just like a marker of a target we need to hit for Jake. And then here is what's actually happening on the contract ops side of the house. So he's actually been committed 110,000 real dollars. And of those contracts, he's been paid 90,000. And again, this is a demo dashboard, so these are blank, but you would quickly see your entire roster and where they stand versus what they've been committed from a coach or an administrator and what's actually happening on the ground in terms of dollars under contract and dollars paid. And then one more layer, if we click and see his profile, we can see the rosters he's a part of and the actual contracts themselves and the payouts. So we can see, looks like he's on a monthly cadence. The reason he hasn't got that full 110 is it looks like his October payment's past due and we haven't got his December payment in there. So really easy and quick way to understand what's happening on the ground versus kind of what these ideal scenarios are being laid out in the general manager product. So
if I can just make one quick comment, Dan, you touched on the date range piece. Folks, I think we largely anticipate there's going to be kind of like seasonal years that come into play. The football cap year is going to be from X to Y. The basketball cap year is going to be from X to Y. We don't know exactly what those are yet. We've designed the product in a way that allows us to, bring those more into focus as we get, more and more detail from, house settlement and, conferences and things along those lines. We are going to, at least be able to have the flexibility to kind of ascertain and then ultimately bring that to life within the product itself. In the meantime,
absolutely.
flex your dates how you see fit, or slice and dice the world as best you can.
Mm-hmm. And last thing I want to touch on this roster view is commitments table. So, um, like we showed on the budget, where you can kind of select where the different fund sources are coming for a given budget, you can also track those at the player level as well. So you can enter in, we don't have Jake here, but Marcus is going to get, say, 10,000 from rev share, 10,000 from the collective, so on and so forth, so that we're, giving a full view of where the money's coming from and where it's going. And so to get a better understanding of that, you can hop over to the analytics tab. The first set of analytics here are kind of department level, high level. At the highest level, where is the money going to? We've, in the beginning set a $30 million department budget. We can see 16.5 is going to football. It looks like ice hockey is overspent a little bit. They've been allocated 4.5, but their roster is spending 5.1, and then we've got another 4 million that we need to allocate to a different team, or we could bump one of these budgets up. So that's at the highest level. If you scroll down, we start getting a little bit more granular with the analytics we offer. So here is a breakdown of those fund sources I mentioned. So you can, again, we start with this $30 million department budget, and then you can see this 4 million unallocated. And instead of showing the teams the money's going to, we showed the sources the money's coming from. So you can see we've got a budget for 10 million in rev share. We've allocated 8 million of that, so on and so forth for these different groups. And then lastly, we start getting into kind of performance analytics and ensuring that the dollars are being spent in the right way. So right now we're looking at football. You can select any team, and the 2024 roster, you can select any roster. And then we've got a couple different key values that you can analyze your spend across. So right now this is based on position group. And we'll just take quarterback, for example. We analyzed some NFL data. It looks like average NFL team allocates 15% of their budget to the quarterback position. So you can see, okay, we've got 17%. That seems reasonable. And you can kind of do this position by position analysis to make sure you're allocating your budget in the way you want to. You can also then go by tags and get a little bit more detail. You have full customization over these, so you can group players however you want, and slice and dice this in lots of different ways. But you can see, looks like we're spending 40% of the budget on retention, only 5% on recruiting. Maybe we want to, reallocate some funds towards recruiting, and down the line with player ranks and graduation years. And we're adding more to this constantly to provide better and deeper insights to how you're spending your money, and what kind of ROI that is being provided.
Yeah, Dan, I don't know if you have it up, but like, I think the point that you made about being able to see holistically what's going into an athlete from a compensation perspective between scholarships, Alston, rev share, collective brand deals. We're really trying to help these GMs, these administrators to have a better sense, and the athletes for that matter, have a more truer sense of what the true compensation package is for these specific athletes, so that when they're going to them and saying, hey, we're going to give you X, there's real dollars that are associated with a lot of these benefits that athletes, have largely gotten, year in and year out. As you package those up with a rev share contract and a brand deal and some of these other ones, I think it provides a much more holistic understanding of, what's going into them. And as you're, aggregating and laddering that up across an entire roster, what your investment profile actually looks like from team to team, and more broadly across the entire department. Anything else, Dan?
That's it. I think we've got some time at the end to possibly show what's coming next. So I'll pass it back to you, and then
Yeah.
we can take another look towards the end of the call.
Thank you, Dan. I thought that was a great kind of high level demo of the product and what it does. And again, just as a reminder to everyone on the call, that is literally like just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, there is so much to this. So we could literally be here for the next 2 or 3 hours, which no one signed up for, to go through all the different things that this program can do. But Thomas, I think one of the things that would be helpful for the group out there is to talk specifically about how some of these schools are using it. For example, maybe let's dive into a current situation that I think everyone on the call will have to deal with, such as dealing with transfers, right? Upcoming transfer portal, what part of your roster staying, what part of your roster is going, what holes are created. So maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, I think it's it's the one that's most easy to talk about, because it's the one that we're, seeing every single day as folks are getting ready for. I think we're now like within weeks away from the transfer portal opening up. Um, yeah, the way that we're seeing it, Dan showed it. Understanding how much of your budget you want to allocate to different aspects of your team, I think is a really important thing that not many folks have today, or at least like they may anecdotally understand it, but having the real dollars and cents and the the percentages behind how much are you allocating of your budget in one specific direction to the other is really helpful. I think it's also been helpful from our using of the product perspective of understanding. I don't know, Dan, that we showed it, but kind of the eligibility years remaining at different position groups and understanding how much of your budget is being allocated by kind of eligibility year. So as you start to plan out, hey, my budget from year 1 to year 2 to year 4 to year 10, how are we seeing kind of the matriculation of those funds go through as kids are, largely making their way through the academic years that they have eligibility for? The big obviously piece to this that we see a ton of, and Dan, maybe it's one that we can double click into, is the fair market value. I think that's for us the piece that we get the most kind of excitement about, and get a whole bunch of folks that really kind of want to dive deeper into the fair market values of these athletes themselves. Just to give you guys some context, the way that we derive those values is dollars to athletes. So, we've been fortunate. We work with, 70 plus campuses across the country. We pay a lot of student athletes, thousands and thousands of athletes. We'll process, should be well over $100 million to athletes this year. And candidly, guys, we're not a marketplace. We're not doing a ton of brand deals. We're not doing a ton of, like, hey, company finds an athlete and wants to do something. We're typically paying athletes through collectives and now more and more through universities, for what they do, when they are enrolled at your program. So, we're not really graying, our data with a bunch of ancillary stuff or things that don't, maybe really impact the value that, a certain level of player at a certain position with a certain amount of eligibility brings to the roster. And the fair market values in our system are updating in real time, every single day. So as contracts are going into our platform, as payments are going to athletes, we are seeing those market values change in real time. And I think we have heard from a lot of our users and the GMs that are using this today, and the campuses that have this, hey, at least having some, baseline of where the market is at gives me a way bigger edge as I'm talking to agents, as I'm talking to parents, as I'm talking directly to the athletes about, what we can budget and what we can allocate to, certain players as we're trying to bring them into, our team. So I would say that's the one piece that we tend to get the most focus on as we're dealing and heading into really high volume times, which are obviously around, transfers and recruiting pushes.
Yeah, and just to pile on a little bit to what Thomas said, we'll process back to that $100 million. We're talking about specific taking emotions out of it, right? So when we've talked to coaches, for example, you've got a kid that walks into your office and says, "Hey, if you don't pay me X, I'm going to enter the transfer portal." Or you have a recruit, "If you don't pay me X, I'm not going to come for a visit," or something. Not to say this is a perfect science, because we know that there's always emotion, especially when it comes to dollars, but we're able to take that emotion out of it, right? If you can now say, listen, you're a point guard, you're asking me for $300,000. And when I look at data, I mean, this is data analytics, again, another buzzword that people love to use. This is data analytics at its finest. When you can look and say, I've got, a sample size of the entire group of 5, the entire Power 4, the entire FCS, whatever it may be, because we've got it broken down, and you can break it down by subgroups and say the average point guard is, getting $175,000 or $200,000. Now, again, not to say that kid's not going to be stubborn about it and say, I'm still not going to come for a visit, but I think it gives you a little bit more, confidence and security around going and having that conversation with the kid because of that. And that's not a, algorithm that says, hey, based on however many, Instagram followers or however many, X followers or however many, recruiting this and recruiting that. This is real numbers that are being paid out. So I think that's a big deal. you know, when Dan talked about the platform here, we really think about it in two ways. We think about it as a roster management tool, and we think about it as a budget management tool. So again, maybe before we jump into another subject here, Dan or Thomas, maybe talk a little bit about more specifically about, for example, the budget management. How is that being used today by these
Yeah.
football GMs or basketball GMs or coaches or administrators?
I mean, I'll tell you in truth, the real impetus for the product was more on the budget management side than it was the roster management side. And it really came to a head when I was on a campus talking with a GM before he was even really the GM. He was like basically like their chief of staff, head of the team, and the roster, the sport administrator, the athletic director, and the head of the collective. In between those four nodes, you had at any given point in time, you know, someone was, brought an Excel spreadsheet. Someone was literally hand scratching onto a notepad. Someone was just verbally talking. There was no real like one way to see the world, and that was what the intention of this product was to bring a single song sheet for everyone to kind of sing off of. And I think the budget side of this really enables administrators, athletic department to see holistically what's going on across all of their rosters, across, down to the athlete level, from to a contract and payment level, what's going in, building up to the roster, building up to the whole holistic department budget, within those budgets for the coaches and the GMs to be able to have conversations with their sport administrators and the folks that they're, are their key stakeholders around how do we allocate that budget across our team to most effectively, get a return from the dollars that we're investing in this roster. I think those are the component pieces that we've tried to bring to life and allow people to really see with clarity what's going on within their broader ecosystem. Because up until now, it's been very opaque and very gray. And I've got a collective that's paying out, maybe 20 million. I've got, some boosters over here that are doing something. I've got, we've got memberships. We got trying to bring all of that into one place that someone can see what's going on within their broader environment was really the impetus for this. And obviously we've gotten a whole lot deeper on the roster side and trying to help from a competitive advantage perspective, understanding how to best spend those dollars. But that was really the intention of when we kicked this off.
Right. Okay, so true to our promise, we said we were going to listen. We said we were going to adapt. So two questions have been posed that are they're sort of related, right? The first one, I'll repeat it for the benefit of the broader group. The first one, which is a much easier question to answer, and then the second one we're going to actually show you. The first one is, hey, you sign up for this product. Do you have access to the ops product as well? And the simple answer is yes. We look at this as an interconnected product, right? One talks to the other. That's one of the beauties of this. You don't have to, have two separate different, administrator has two different products, two different softwares, update one, then they have to export a report and come back and see how it affects the other. These are being connected, right? So as you pay your athlete on the ops software, it adapts. It automatically comes over to the GM and vice versa. So that's the simple answer is we look at this as all together. You sign up for one product, you're signing up for the entire suite of services. Specifically, the other question that came up is, can the payment to the athletes be made through the GM tool? So Thomas, I'll let you kind of take that one.
It's kind of a yes and no. You may have seen it when Dan was pulling up the demo. We have a payouts tab within the broader tool, which is where you'll actually go to hit the pay button. The general manager, tab that we were just in, as you saw, was, it's one click away. So I think the short answer is yes, you can see all of it and, interact with it all within one single kind of user experience. We're not going to have you like sign out and go sign in somewhere else to do payments. It's you sign in once, the entire platform is in front of you. You're going to have to go to one place to, create a contract. You're going to have to go to one place to, hit the pay button. You're going to go one place to see a roster, but all interconnected within that same user experience.
Yeah, we realize that, just kind of moving on here to another subject, we realize that each of you at your specific institutions have completely different needs. Your coaches think about rosters differently. You as administrators might think about budgets differently. Your conferences might have, some input on, a clearinghouse or something else that needs to happen. So we realize that of the 29 people that are on this call, there's probably 29 different strategic needs. One of the things, as Thomas said when we started this seminar, is we like to think of ourselves as very customizable, very adaptable. We've got a robust customer success team that is there. I said at one point 24/7, and I think I got a comment of, hey, they're not answering calls at 3 in the morning because they do need to sleep. And said, okay,
Oh,
fair enough, but they're probably doing it at 9 a.m. over their coffee on a Saturday morning if need be. So Thomas, maybe speak to how we work with specific needs, specific strategies at different schools. Should
yeah,
anyone out there be, say, hey, I love the program as a whole, but I have this specific need because my coach wants to do this.
sure. Yeah, I mean, guys, first and foremost, we want to be partners. We actually do care, and like, don't take my word for it. I know a lot of people on this call use our stuff already, which, hopefully you've actually felt this and you actually believe it to be true because you've experienced it. But we actually do want to be a partner with you on this journey. We believe that this part of the industry actually requires someone to focus on just this and this alone because it is so changing. The one consistent thing about this space is it's inconsistent. And it requires someone to be able to adapt, to be agile, to be fast. And I think we've tried to, in many ways, and Dan alluded to at the front end, design our product in a way that allows us to, you know, lift and shift and customize this tool to the needs of our specific users. We'll get into this probably in a second, but one of the big things that we do see with this product as we move forward is creating more customizable views. So what you saw was kind of the generic, like, hey, if you sign in today, this is the standard fare. We also recognize, hey, coaches look at different data sets when they're analyzing their teams. Administrators look at different things when they're trying to understand what's going into their budgets. We are not creating a one size fit all tool here. We are creating something that allows for folks to come in, and you already saw some of that in terms of how we're creating tags that can be, unique to your own specific views and needs. We've also built out a dozen and one different integrations. We have integrations with Plaid and Stripe and SendGrid and Twilio and MailChimp and, a whole bunch of others. I'm sure Dan can list them off better than I can. But hey, we need to send something into NIL Assist. We need to send something into, LBI. We need to send something into, wherever it may be. Like, we're more than capable and have done it dozens and dozens of times of integrating our software and tools into other things to help with data flow, help with communication flow, so that we're not adding any additional work. Our mantra here is we remove friction. We're trying to make this as seamless a process as possible and hopefully add some value to your teams and your administration along the way.
I'm going to continue to pick off a couple questions that are coming from the group, and then we'll keep going again with some other details. So, real simple answer to a question of, does GM only illustrate football and men's basketball, or is there same data available for baseball and women's basketball and Olympic sports? The short answer is it's available for, you can build rosters, you can manage budgets for any sport. Again, there's a customizable part. If you have 24 sports, we'll put in 24 sports. If you've got 32 sports, we'll put in 32 sports. The fair market value piece, however, again, since, as Thomas and Dan said, since those are based on real dollars paid, those will be more available for the, specific sports, right? So if you've got, I don't know, crew, and we're only paying a handful of crew athletes, there's probably not enough of a data point and a size to go do it for a crew team. But rest assured that with $100 million and more than half of the Power Four athletes and spread out over 24 conferences, there is a significant sample size, certainly for what I would describe as most of the major sports that are getting revenue share or previously NIL dollars. So hopefully that answers that question. And if somebody,
the only thing I would add there, Bob, is we are not in the business of giving away anyone's identifiable information. So if the sample size is not large enough, we're just not going to share it. that may be a bummer because it takes away some of the data that we can share with folks. But yeah, I think we very much kind of lean on the side of conservatism as it relates to, if we don't have a large enough data set, and that's even true within football. We pay Heisman hopeful quarterbacks. There's only 4 of them in the country. Like if we were going to try to, hey, yeah, you could probably go on our website and see that we pay athletes at Colorado, and it's like great. I don't want you to go back and try to like reverse engineer what is Shedeur Sanders making. So those are things that we do try to protect the athletes. We really try to protect our users, and we're not going to give away any information if we don't have a large enough sample size to anonymize it. Which in that case, like, yeah, we probably don't have great data for crew. Sorry, but we are still more than happy to try to give you as insights as best we can, even offline if there's ways that we can help.
Thomas, another question came up, which is not really a GM product question, but I think it's certainly good to inform the group, and that is the question around how does the transaction happen, right? So like the question that came up is, are institutions filtering money to Basepath, and then Basepath distributes that? This specific question has a hint towards the employment aspect and some of the challenges that maybe some of the institutions might be facing with that. So maybe speak to the transaction part of how does this all work?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that I think we're still figuring out in real time. I mean, I can tell you, in the past 2 weeks, we're talking with schools where some are going to run the dollars through their collective or agency. If some that are going to run the dollars directly from the institution's bank accounts to athletes. We have some that are going to, use a third-party administrator to serve as kind of the pass-through. As far as the employment status and the indemnification and liability removal process, I think that's why you're seeing a lot of folks that are trying to leverage third parties, because we can take some of that off of the plate for the institution, and for the athletes for that matter, as kind of the steward of that payment processing side. But yeah, I mean, candidly, I was on a call with 20 folks earlier today in a business office, and there's a ton of implications around, from tax to payments to state laws to there's a dozen one different component pieces to this that are probably unique, as Bob mentioned, from campus to campus. And so typically when we're having a conversation with folks, we're trying to understand what are the limitations and what are the risks associated with how they want to operationalize things, and then putting the pieces in place to make it fit for their specific campus requirements and state requirements for that matter.
Yeah, but the short answer is we're not, there's some models that from a pricing standpoint, it may make more sense for your institution for the dollars to be held in a quote unquote escrow account. In most cases that we operate, these dollars are your dollars. I'm sure your CFOs, and for those CFOs that are on the call, I'm sure you all are very judicious about where those dollars sit and how they sit. So in that regard, it's your dollars. Our business is connecting. Thomas, I think, has used the term before of we've built the pipes for the water to run through, and it doesn't matter where it starts. 99.9% it's going to end in the student athlete's bank account. But where it starts, it's going to vary school to school, and we've got the flexibility, whether it's through a foundation or through an institution or through a collective or wherever it may be. Before we dive too much further into some of these questions, Dan and Thomas, I think it's fair to say, where's this thing going, right? Where do we go from here, right? Like you talked about the V1.25. What's V2? What's V3? How are we thinking about this? Because I know Dan wakes up every single morning thinking about this.
Yeah, Dan may have a different answer than I do, candidly. I'll tell you the vision that I have in my mind is, and Dan, you have to build a roadmap for this quite yet, but I see a world in which you are going to have a true sense of what your budget is, for what you can go out there and spend within the marketplace. You're going to have a sense for what the gaps are within your roster. And what we're going to be able to help you with is to think about the world in terms of how you are buying wins versus buying maybe individual players. Like that's like maybe a little bit too moneyballish for some. But essentially what I want to do is I want to show you, hey, here are the last 50 college football playoff teams. the average, offensive rank for those teams was 92.1. The average defensive rank was 89.7. The average spend across those teams was, 52 in offense and 48 in defense, and 47 in defense and 1% to your special teams. Mr. and Mrs. Coach, Mr. and Mrs. Administrator, hey, with your budget and with what your current roster composition looks like, here's how you can best structure a team that allows you to look most like a college football playoff team or a Sweet 16 team or a, Frozen Four team or these are what the teams look like when they're playing in Omaha. So those are the kinds of things that I think we are moving towards. Dan, it might be worth it to just kind of show a little. So I said we weren't going to show you anything that's not real. We are going to show you some stuff that's not real right now, but like where we're kind of in the immediate term trying to take this thing. If I'm putting you on the spot, Dan, don't worry. But yeah, I mean, it's really leaning harder into how do we help you understand the competitive performance of these athletes? As you see over in the bottom right-hand corner, that the breakdown of funds, this goes back to the comments we were making around how do you help an athlete to understand holistically between, scholarships, Alston, rev share, even per diem and, different allowances that they're getting on top of, a rev share dollar and a collective dollar, what their total compensation package looks like. But then also giving you all the ability to see, hey, how much are we paying per tackle, per touchdown, per home run, per stolen base, per three-pointer? And then what is the average of that across the Power Four, the group of five, D1 in total, D2, whatever it may be, so that you can start to see how do we stack up? How are we spending? Are we efficient? Are we inefficient? Where are we doing the best? Where are we doing the worst? So that you can start making better, true data-driven decisions around, your spend and obviously the competitive performance that comes from it. Thanks, Dan.
No problem. Yeah, totally agree. I couldn't have said it better. I think one way I tend to think about it is we've laid a really solid foundation with GM, with our budgets, our rosters, and our player analytics. And the next step is to just continue going deeper on all those three areas. So how can we take those three different areas and provide more meaningful insights, answer more questions, and ultimately help programs and teams win? So.
Yeah, and on the subject of where this thing is going, and Thomas also mentioned this when we were starting the call about the feedback that we get from our customers. We've got an internal communication system that has a bunch of different channels. One of the channels is sales product feedback, and I would argue that that channel gets the most traction, the most action, the most use of just about any other internal communications. And that is because when we sign up a school, when we sign up a partner, we literally think of you as you now become part of the product team. Okay. And we have a ton of daily feedback from our users. Hey, can you do this? Or, hey, can you help me do that? Or, hey, when this thing goes into the next generation, it would be great to have this. And, we take that all very much to heart. And I would say that some huge percentage of the feedback that we gets either immediately implemented, if it's something that can be immediately implemented, and at a minimum it gets thrown into the think tank of when Dan and the rest of his team go think about further developing this. So we have a couple of promises that we've made to ourselves and that we've publicly made to our clients, and that is that you will be part of the innovation of this company. You will be part of the innovation of future products, because that's how we think about it. And candidly, that's what has separated us from maybe others in the space that have thought about this more in a, hey, I build it and they use it, or they use package A, B, or C. These are all snowflakes. You guys all have very, very different needs out there. You have very, very different situations, including budgets, and we're gonna basically do our damnedest to fulfill those needs.
It looks like we have one other question from the audience.
Yeah,
I'll just this one really quick.
Say that.
Are we only showing fair market value transactions for market data based on our transactions, or does it include others? It's just ours. We don't pull any data from outside sources. We're just looking at things that are running through our platform. Um, and in many ways, that's to try to avoid some of the, the feedback that we got from the industry around like, hey, we'll share with you if you share with us, like, kind of bad in, bad out data. We want to keep the data set, we want to keep the integrity of the data set very strong and kind of uncompromised. So thankfully we are running a lot of payments. Is it the perfect sample size of the entire industry? No. Is it probably better than anything else that's out there? Yeah. And I think we're continuing to obviously expand and bring more and more into that data set with each passing day. But we aren't like pulling anything from On3 or from, hey, Joe said this or the agent told us. It's all just data that's confined to our system. Feel free to continue to drop questions in there, folks, as we go forward. I think we've got at 10, 15 minutes left. So if there's anything that's burning you up, hit us with it. Other than that, Bob, any other ones that we needed to cover off from the questions that we had from folks coming into this, or we hit it all?
I don't think so. I think we've talked about the points that I wanted to cover there at the end were really about the specific needs based on the different schools, the adaptability to other programs that the school might be using or required to use by their conference or someone. And then we talked a little bit about the future, the kind of the next generation, if you will, of this product and where it's going. So unless we want to tackle any of those more specifically, or
no, I think folks,
invitation from the group on any specific questions that you have based on your specific situations, obviously we'll keep it anonymous.
Where do you pull the official rosters from, and how do you keep up with the transfer portal as athletes move? And then can you elaborate on the ranking system for GM? The ranking system for GM, Dan, I'll probably kick over to you. As far as official rosters go, we work very closely with the partner institutions to ensure that we've got the rosters up to date. We can plug into roster data live depending on kind of what systems they live within. We've done that, more than once, so that you can have live feeds of the roster kind of updated. Beyond that, we have a really intense and intentional customer success team that spends the vast majority of their time just making sure that everything is up to date within the platform, and certainly we put a strong emphasis on the roster data itself when we're dealing with the GM tool. As far as, Dan, the question around how are we pulling kind of the initial ranks for the starter All-American contributor development depth?
Yeah, so if someone was a starter, we've got this rank legend here when you're editing players. We kind of show you where these numerical rankings convert into our All-American starter, contributor, etc. So a starter would be anywhere between 85 and 98. So if you were to adjust this, say, down to 90, you see the fair market value would update to incorporate that new ranking. Also going into the future, as we have more data, we're able to get more granular and work with partners to kind of give a more precise measurement of where a player falls in these performance rankings. So we'll see some updates here soon that will kind of help you guys zero in on more precisely what type of player you're analyzing and what their performance is, and we'll be able to give very accurate and precise measurements in terms of fair market value. But for right now, we just go off this rank system here.
And then once the transfer portal opens, will everyone that gets in it be visible within GM? No, is the short answer. We will certainly do our best to fill out kind of that prospect list with every transfer portal that comes in. We don't have a direct feed into the NCAA's kind of transfer portal system, so I can't say with absolute certainty that everyone will be in there from the jump, but there are a number of different tools out there that I think do a great job of tracking it that we'll be leaning into as it evolves. Beyond that, folks, feel free to continue to send questions over to us, either right now or as we sign off here. We're going to send this over to everyone who joined. We'll shoot off this recording so that you have it for your own kind of stakeholders and constituents, or just to rewatch yourselves, you have access to us at any time. Thomas at basepath.com, Bob at basepath.com, Dan at basepath.com. Feel free to reach out to us if there's anything that we can ever do. We really appreciate you giving us a chance to walk you through what we've got and what we're, already seeding on dozens of campuses across the country. And if there's any way that we can help you on your journey as you're continuing to move down the NIL athlete compensation rev share, world, please let us know. We would be more than happy. At the very least, we will be able to help you with some of the best practices that we're seeing across the many folks that we're working with across the industry. And at worst, we'll find a way to help you to, just make life a little bit easier. So cannot thank you enough. Dan, Bob, thanks so much for being a part of this and joining along.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Great day, folks.